So we discussed the mind is a transmitter and the mind is a transformer. Now mind as a transmitter, it has to continue functioning. We don't have to change anything in that. The mind as a transformer, it is meant to be a transformer. The mind as transformer, that's what we'll discuss. Sometimes it may transform in a way that is good for us. That means, what does good means? Good means that that is important information that becomes magnified. And that is unimportant becomes demagnified or minimized. So, or the transformation can be a bad transformation. Bad transformation means, like I was giving the example in the previous class, this friend of mine, he saw a bottle of alcohol and that just stayed stuck in his mind. Now we might see some obscene image somewhere and that just stayed stuck. It has become maximized and we don't even, there's no minimize button only visible anywhere. What do? It says stuck in my mind. Sometimes it happens, somebody speaks some hurtful words to us and other people, somebody says, just forget it. I say, there is no button to forget it, How do I forget it? It just maximizes. Sometimes, there are some very intrusive ads which just occupy the full screen and there doesn't seem to be any cross anywhere. The cross is in the same color as the background. You cannot detect the cross only. So how do you minimize it? It seems it has hijacked our screen completely. So some conditioning seem to be like that. So the transformation can be good or bad. Good means what? That which is valuable, that is maximized. That is good transformation. Any valuable information, that is anything that is coming in, if that is maximized, that is good. Bad means that which is irrelevant, that which is harmful, that which is deceptive, that gets maximized. That which is distracting and irrelevant are the same thing. So that gets maximized. So what we would like to do is make our mind healthy. We want to transform our mind so that instead of this, we will have more of this. So we don't want this, we want this. The mind should be a transformer in a healthy way. That means if we come to a temple and take darshan of Krishna, and that darshan of Krishna should get impressed in our mind, and throughout the day we remember the darshan. But on the other hand, we are coming along to the temple and there is some ad and there is some picture over there, and that picture gets stuck in our mind. So that's something which we do not want. So basically, the mind should be transforming. When you say always remember Krishna, how are we going to remember Krishna? Krishna is not visible everywhere around us. So then whatever memories we have of Krishna, those should be maximized by the mind, isn't it? So Hindi में कहते भगवान को याद करो, पर अगर यादें ही नहीं है तो याद कैसे करेंगे? Isn't it? So first we have to have some memories of Krishna, and those memories need to be maximized. So that's how the transformation of the mind is what we are looking for right now. So when we are talking about transformation of the mind, we are talking about it from a spiritual sense, but also from a functional sense in this world. Because the mind can obstruct us not just in spiritual life, the mind can obstruct us in daily life also. There are so many people who have mental health problems nowadays. Addiction can ruin a person materially also. People who are traumatized by something, for them, even normal functioning of life becomes difficult. So when we talk about the transformation of the mind, by destiny, we have a particular kind of mind. And now, how much can we change the mind? How much do we work with the mind? How much do we accept that this is not going to change at all? That's what we will try to discuss now. So, I'm not going to make this class very long. We'll have a good amount of time for question and answers. So, if I move to the next part, the insight. So, if we consider the mind has impressions inside them. So, how do the impressions work? They are formed by our previous actions. Okay. So, now the mind is like a programmed device. It's like a software. So, it's programmed. And we have certain amount of programming with it already there. It is programmed, but it is also programmable. It is programmed and programmable. So for example, if you consider a phone. Now in a phone, if you have Android phone or if you have an Apple phone, there is a basic OS. That OS we can't change. So like that, there is a basic level of Swabhava which we have, we can't change it. But above that, there are certain apps which are installed. Now we may not be able to uninstall them, but we decided I don't want to use them. We can install some other apps also, which we want to use regularly. So the idea is, programmed means that there is something which is coming from the past. Now some of it is fixed, some of it is changeable. Like you have on our phone, there may be certain apps which the manufacturer only provides. Now some of them we can delete if you want. Some of them you may have to root the phone to delete them. It's a little more complicated, but you can do it. So some of the programmable means, of course, they are changeable. So, like somebody is, what the Gita says, Arjuna, if you're a Kshatriya, you can live austerely like a Brahmana or a sannyasi for some time. But that's not how you all want to live lifelong. That's not who you are. So the idea is that we all have certain programming which it's very, very difficult to change. But some programming can be changed. And sometimes you can write new programs also. So with this now, with this understanding, let's look at, we talked about broadly, if we consider the mind, we discussed there are two kinds of programmings in the mind. One is the instincts, that is the vrittis, and the other is the impulses. Now broadly speaking, we say the instincts are positive, the impulses are negative. So impulses could be lust, anger, greed, jealousy, all these are impulses. Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, these are all the instincts which we have. So now Shudra, sometimes we may consider them as foolish people. Or it's now sometimes it is used that sense, Shudras are not foolish people, all of them. They're artisans, they're an important limb of society, and they may not have the same level of impulse control that the Brahmanas have. But they also have instincts. And Shudras can do many things that Brahmanas can't do. They are competent in certain areas. And within the Vedic tradition, there has been two schools of thought. See, we have sometimes have a very Mayavadi idea of the Vedic tradition. What do I mean Mayavadi idea? Not that all of it was all Mayavadi, that we think that everything was the same throughout history for millions and millions of years. No, life changes, the world changes, things adapt. So, in the Vedic tradition, now the common idea is this Varnashram is hierarchical. Like you have the body, the head is at the top and the legs are at the bottom. The Brahmanas are the head. But there is another conception also mentioned in the Manusmriti, in some indirect verses, not very directly. But that is that these four Varnas, instead of being like a body, they are more like the lanes of an expressway. Society has to move along all the four lanes. That society needs everyone. So rather than the focus on the hierarchy, is focused on the cooperation. Now, even within the hierarchy means top down. Even within the hierarchy also cooperation is there. The head and the leg both have to work together. But the leg is below and the head is above. But if you consider 4 lanes in an expressway, then what happens is, or let's not take 4 lanes. Normally if you have, that's not the best metaphor. It's like basically 4 parts. Like if you have a train which goes on 2 rails. Suppose there is a train which requires 4 rails to go. So society moves on 4 rails. So all 4 rails are required. Society requires Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. So we can go in the hierarchical direction, but we don't have to necessarily always go in the hierarchical direction. Kshatriyas also have impulses and instincts. Shudras also have impulses and instincts. And now instincts, as we discussed, they need to be developed and the impulses need to be curbed. The impulses need to be curbed, the instincts need to be developed. With this understanding now, how does this work? See, the key point is for the mind, if the instincts are to be developed, what does that mean? That's if somebody is good at music, then they practice music, they listen to music, they create music, and gradually their music sensibility increases. Somebody is good at language, they write, they read, they analyze, they come and they review, and they just learn to use the right words more and more and more. So basically, the key for reprogramming the mind is practice. So, abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagena cha gruyate. Abhyas and vairagya. Let's try to understand this. What we want to do, the instincts we want to improve, the impulses we want to curb. But either way, whatever we want to do, how do we do it? So there are basically the abhyas and vairagya. So what does it mean? How does it work? You know, I'm based in Mumbai. Have you heard of this small thing in Mumbai? So there is this Bollywood. Now, whichever part of the world I go, I had gone to Panama. There also people know about Bollywood. So they know. So suppose somebody has visited a website called Bollywood.com. Maybe they have visited it 100 times. And they come for a spiritual talk and they hear about the Bhagavad-gita. And they say, okay, I want to know what is the Bhagavad-gita. So they want to visit Bhagavad-gita.com. They open their browser and type B. What happens? Bollywood.com comes as autocomplete. But did they want to go to Bollywood.com? No. It comes because that was what was there previously. Already there. Now, if they want to visit Bhagavad-gita.com, what do they have to do? They have to type it all. So Bollywood.com comes as autocomplete. They have to choose not to go there. And they have to type all the 12 letters. Bhagavad-gita.com. So, going towards Bhagavad-gita.com, typing that is abhyas. And not going towards Bollywood.com, that is the vairagya. So, abhyasa and vairagya. What that means is that the impression that we want to reinforce, we do that. The impression that we want to get rid of, we stay away from it. Now, if we do that, what will happen by this? By this gradually, suppose we visit 5 times, visit Bhagavad-gita.com. Then next time we type B, still if you have visited Bollywood.com 100 times, Bollywood.com will come as the first autocomplete. But Bhagavad-gita.com will also come as one of the autocompletes. Now, if you visit 25 times or 50 times Bhagavad-gita.com, then Bhagavad-gita.com will start coming as the first autocomplete. So the idea is abhyasa and vairagya. So the mind can be programmed. What do we do? Just do what we want, what is desirable, what is healthy, what is constructive, and avoid what is unconstructive, what is counterproductive. And if you keep doing that, so abhyasa can be done. Abhyas is, you can call it as persistence. Vairagya is abstinence. So what we want to persist, we create some bonds with it. I will do that regularly. What we want to abstain from it, we create some boundaries. So this is the simple way that the mind can be transformed. That we all need certain bonds and certain boundaries. So consider how the mind's transformation works. So if we are functioning, there are bonds, yes or no, on the x-axis, and boundaries, yes or no, on the y-axis. Then we will have 4 quadrants, in which bonds but no boundaries is quadrant 1, neither boundaries nor bonds is quadrant 2, boundaries but no bonds is quadrant 3, and both bonds and boundaries is quadrant 4. So what does this mean? That means that, say, we visit Bhagavad-gita.com and don't visit Bollywood.com. That will be quadrant 4. Now, we don't set any bond that I have to visit Bhagavad-gita.com. We don't set any boundaries. Bollywood.com, so let's go there only. So we could say, for transformation, which is the best situation among these 4 quadrants? 4th, yes. This is the most transformative. If we are having bonds and boundaries together, That is the way we can be most effectively transformed. So when we take Diksha, we form bonds and boundaries. The bonds are, we'll chant a particular number of rounds. The boundaries are, we'll follow the four regulative principles. Now, that is important, but it's not just a mechanical thing. Okay, I've taken this vow, I'll follow this. Each one of us also, those are universal bonds and boundaries that we may commit to. But beyond that, each one of us, based on the mind that we have, we may have to decide these are the kind of bonds I want to develop further. And these are the boundaries I need so that I don't get carried away. So each of us may need this. Now, if we have neither bonds not boundaries, then this will be the most destructive or even destructive. The most destructive because here is whatever is the conditioning, there is no attempt sustainably to transform it, and that conditioning is being perpetuated. If somebody is an alcoholic, they do not attend, say, Alcoholics Anonymous or some meetings like that to try to change themselves. They do not take up any bonds, no responsibilities, and they have lots of alcohol in their home itself to drink. Then what is going to happen? They're going to get more and more addicted. So no bond, no bond is not going to work. Now let's look at the other two quadrants. If we have bonds but no boundaries, and if we have boundaries but no bonds. So among these two, which is better? Having both is the best, isn't it? But if you see, if you have bonds but no boundaries, what will happen is, here we will be always endangered. Endangered means what? Say, we are sitting down to study Shastra. We want to study Bhagavad-gita regularly, properly. We are sitting around to study Bhagavad-gita, but we are sitting in the same room where there are 5 other people who are watching TV. And we sit and study Bhagavad-gita. Okay, study the Bhagavad-gita, but they start cheering something, they start laughing, they start thinking, what happened? Oh, this happened, this movie is going on, this is going on. We get caught in that. There are bonds, but no boundaries. We will always be in danger. So, isn't it? Because there are no boundaries over there. Now, if there are boundaries, but no bonds, then what will happen is, we will feel suffocated. This is what I won't do, but what will I do? So many times when we make resolutions, we often make resolutions of what we will not do. I'll not eat this kind of food, or I will not offend devotees. I will not do this, I will not do that. That is like we are setting boundaries. But boundaries without bonds don't work very well. See, the simple fact in psychology is that, with respect to mind management, is that we cannot do a don't. We cannot do a don't. What does it mean? If I tell my mind, okay, don't think about a pink monkey. Whatever you want, you can do, just don't think about a pink monkey. What will the mind do? Think about the pink monkey. We cannot do a don't. So when we set a boundary without a bond, it's like we're trying to do a don't. So for us, if we want to change, we need to try to set bonds and we need to try to set boundaries. Now, to the extent we do this, to that extent we will be able to transform ourselves. Now we could also say that destiny may determine to what extent can we set some boundaries and to what extent can we set some bonds. But we have some freedom for that. When I was in America last year, one devotee showed me a clipping from an old American movie. Not maybe 10, 15 years ago. He says, one man is asking another man, are you a vegetarian? I'm an American. So the idea is, if you're American, how can you be a vegetarian? So they think that meat is just a normal part of their diet. Now, that's not true like that. It's changing much more. Vegan is quite vegan and vegetarianism is quite becoming popular and cool in the West. So, like somebody might be in a position where the meat is just a normal part of their diet. So, for them to set that boundary may be very difficult. Some boundaries may be easier to set, some boundaries may be more difficult to set. So, destiny may determine how easy or difficult is it to set a boundary. Somebody grows in a culture where drinking wine It's just a normal part of daily life. Then if a person, they say, I don't want to drink, they have to go out of their way to avoid the drink. Somebody is born in a culture where most people don't drink only. And setting that boundary is not a very difficult thing. So destiny may determine how easy or difficult is it to set a boundary. But the principle is wherever we are, we need to set some boundaries. And the principle is that we need to set some bonds. So now, how easy is it to set up some bond? That depends. Oh, I was in America this year. I met one devotee. He had come from Iran. So in Iran, during the pandemic, he was searching for some spiritual stuff, born in a Muslim family. And he was searching for some spiritual stuff. He came across Krishna consciousness, quite inspired. And then now we have some devotees in Iran also, but among the various countries in the Middle East, as of now, Dubai and UAE are the most liberal. Bahrain is the most liberal. Dubai is, they're portraying themselves as very liberal because they want to attract tourism and everything. Sharjah and others are a little more conservative. Saudi Arabia is quite conservative. Iran is the most not conservative in a positive sense over here. It's very restrictive. So he wanted association of devotees. He started staying in touch with people online. The association of devotees is an important thing. It's a bond. But there's no possibility of any public gathering for devotees in Iran at all. Even a private gathering is very dangerous. So he had his company, parents were quite wealthy, but they were in a family which involved leather and meat and all those things. So then so physically also, professionally also is quite difficult to have a conducive environment. So then he decided to change his career. He said he had some interest, but he got into academia, into say Middle Eastern studies in sociology, political science and geography, all those geopolitics. And then, so he gave up flourishing business. He did a 1-year course in Iran. And then he applied for a university in America. He got a 2-year course over there. And then during that time, he got some other job. And now he has got association of devotees. So for him to develop that bonds. Now he had that longing for association of devotees that was quite there. But by destiny, he was put in a situation where the practical association of devotees was very difficult. So he had to work for that. So some bonds may be easy to form, some bonds may be difficult to form. But the principle is universal. That if we want to transform our mind, we need bonds and we need boundaries. Now this applies for both the vrittis and the vasanas. For the vasanas, we need boundaries. For the vrittis, for our impulses, we need boundaries. That for the instincts, we need bonds. So, for example, if somebody wants to, say, going back to America, they have their guns legal, but somebody wants to learn self-defense. Maybe somebody wants to learn martial arts or whatever. Now, if they want to learn martial art, they have to form some bonds. Okay, every day I'll go and attend this session. I will do this workout. I'll do this time for practice. That's the bonds. But then, once they learn those martial arts, they should also have the boundary that they don't use the martial arts on innocent people. Just because you have strength, you cannot beat up people. Krishna says that, balam balavatam chaham kama raga vivarjitam. That we have that bala, but we have to use it within boundaries. Dharma aviruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharataji. So broadly speaking, for us, while dealing with a particular artha also, we need bonds and boundaries. But broadly speaking, we need bonds to develop our instincts. And we need boundaries. Sorry. That's a different diagram. Okay? So we need bonds to develop we need bonds and boundaries. Bonds for our instincts and boundaries for our impulses. For our vrittis and vasanas. And in that way, we can be transformed. So the last point now, we go to take away for us. with respect to the transformation, that there is the universal and there is the individual. What do I mean in transformation? There is a universal aspect to it and a individual aspect to it. The universal aspect is that for everyone, whoever may be, the principle of bonds and boundaries applies. For everyone, from wherever we want to change, we have to have bonds and boundaries. That's universal. But the individual will be which bond and which boundary. Not everybody can form the same bond. Ultimately, we want to form a bond for Krishna. Ultimately, we want to have boundary from Maya. But which bond to work on now, which bond to work on later, which boundary to focus right now, which boundary to focus later, that is something which each one of us has to individually decide. Of course, we need guidance, but everybody is an individual. Like each of us has our own field. And so if in our field, particular seeds are likely to grow more, then we have to have bonds. That means we should make sure that those seeds, we are nourishing them. If in our field, our kshetra, particular weeds are likely to grow more, then we have to be careful that we guard against those weeds. So in this way, every one of us, we take responsibility for our transformation. Now, for us, some bonds may be easy to develop, some boundaries may be easier to establish. Some bonds may be difficult to establish, some boundaries may be difficult to establish. And that is just the way of life. We need to accept that and we choose our battles accordingly. Okay, this particular anartha, it's going to take time for me to deal with. This particular anartha, it's an emergency. I'm going to work on it right now. This particular talent, I'm going to develop it right now. This particular talent, I just don't have my life in such a place where I can't explore it right now. Maybe I'll explore it later. That's something which we all will have to decide according to our Desha Kala Patra. So now, what does bhakti do in this? How does bhakti transform? Bhakti is like a game changer. What bhakti does is, even in bhakti, the principle of bonds and boundaries is there. But normally, it's like we are trying to change our mind. We're trying to change the impressions in our mind. But suppose, we have a phone that is locked by our employer. So there are only small things which you can do in the phone. There are many things which you cannot change. But like that, we have a device mind which is locked. There are a few changes we can do. But suppose we contact the employer itself and say, I don't want this app is troubling, I need this app. And the employer can make changes that we can't make changes. Okay? So like that, bhakti is where we tap the power of Krishna. And Krishna can change things dramatically. But that will happen, it's as per Krishna's plan. We can't control when he will do that. That we'll discuss in the last session about how bhakti works in transforming the mind and transforming our conditions. But broadly, this is the key of this is the point of transformation that we discussed today. Transformation of purification. That the concept was that for each one of us, wherever we are, our mind. Now, transform the mind means what? The instincts that are there, we want to make them stronger. And the impulses, we want to make them weaker. And in that way, each one of us would like to transform our mind. And now, the insight is that the mind is programmed and programmable. So some part of your programming is given programming is changeable, some is not changeable. But whatever is changeable, the way we change it is through bonds and boundaries. And we discuss the 4 quadrants accordingly. And finally, we discuss the takeaway for us is that there is a universal principle and there is a specific individual practice. Universal is the bond-boundary principle. The individual is which bond to focus on and which boundary to focus on. In that way, each one of us can move ahead in our life. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So, are there any questions or comments? Wow. Are these from yesterday or today? Okay, any questions about this class right now? How does one differentiate between the intrinsic joy that one gets by doing one's sadharma and the joy one gets by serving Krishna? Well, first thing is, there is no need to differentiate very precisely. As long as we are getting it within the domain that is positive, that is good. So, overall, if somebody has a swadharma towards music, they love music and they have some interest in bhakti also. So they are ready to do practice, they are ready to think about Krishna, do music about Krishna. So now over a period of time, they will start noticing that doing music about Krishna gives a sublime level of joy that doesn't come from other forms of music. So that will be, it's a deeper, more lasting, more transformative kind of joy. So over a period of time, although they like music, they will stop liking so much music that does not have the Krishna element in it. That way, the differentiation will come up. But initially, it's best to stay connected rather than worry too much about whether the intrinsic happiness is coming from where. So the question? Yeah.
Krishna Prabhu, so like in Bhagavad-gita, we read that we act according to the three modes of material nature. So how we can understand this can in synchronous with that? That we act according to our conditioning and the bond and boundary. And our action is based on the three modes we are in. So how we can understand both together?
See, we act. Krishna says, Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha, for example, 327. So now, if you look at the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita, where Krishna talks about it, he also says that we can, by conscious choice, situate ourselves in a particular mode. So, while we are in the material world, we will be controlled by the modes. But we can gradually, incrementally choose which mode we want to be controlled by. And in that sense, we can move towards a higher mode. It will happen gradually. Say, for example, after we take lunch, now we could study, we could go out and chit chat with people, or we could sleep. Now we could say sattva rajas tamas. Now if we decide I want to study, but if we decide to study where, we decide, okay, I'll lie down in my bed. When I lie down in bed, I will study. Well, we won't be on top of the book will be on top of us. Isn't it? So, if we are going to put ourselves in a tamasic environment, the tamasic choice is going to become much more likely. But if we consistently put ourselves in sattvic environment, say we go to library where everybody is studying, then we are more likely to study at that particular point. So, the small choices we can make, and as we keep making small choices, we will be situated more and more in a higher mode. So, there may be a default programming by which we may go towards a particular mode, but we can gradually change that mode. Can I answer your question? Yes. Behind?
Thank you. First, I wanted to ask for people that I have 6-7 questions.
Okay. Let's start with one. Yeah.
The questions that they have, most of them are based on our destiny. So that which is we have, and also we have it coming from previous life also. So my question was that it is because you gave an example of a person who is an alcoholic, and if he sees a alcohol shop, then he starts thinking of that, or a person who has a vasana. So if he is passing by some shop, he gets attracted to it.
So it means that he has performed similar activities in the past on the previous life. That if he has some anartha, so he has performed in his previous life also. So my question was that from the time immemorial, we are practicing this vasanas or vrittis. So in the spiritual world, when we came here, so is it that we are also designed to have some particular vasanas from the very beginning, which got transformed and became vasanas like that, and that's why we are practicing it and practicing it. Because if we do not have the access to perform those activities from the very beginning, then it will not have impression. But we see that we have performed from many lifetimes. How it began?
See, the question how it began has no how was the beginning. That question has no ending. So let's skip that question. Let's move to some other question. Some questions are like intellectual banana peels. You slip on them, you step on them, you slip and fall. So you need a little bit of humility in the intellectual domain. Intellectual humility means that there are some answers that some questions that whose answers we don't have and we may never have also. So that and the question of beginning is like that. No philosophy, whether it is Big Bang or atheism or Christianity or Buddhism or Mayavad or Vaishnavism, no philosophy has a satisfactory answer for the beginning. A fully intellectually satisfactory answer. You can go to degrees of satisfaction or dissatisfaction in the answer. So we would say that the atheistic idea that from matter came consciousness, there is no basis for that. The idea that we have free will and we can misuse our free will, there is some possibility for that. But I think the beginning is something which Krishna has a Krishna nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam eko bahunam yodadati kaman. That Krishna maintains different people. And that maintaining is not just physical, it's also intellectual. That means whatever conception a person wants to have, Krishna gives them reasons to have those conceptions. And that's why with respect to no philosophy in this world will we ever have absolute certainty. That this gives certain categorically sure answers to everything. There's no philosophy like that. That is because Jiva Goswami says that Krishna is bigger than our intelligence. And Krishna's reality, Krishna's world is also bigger than our intelligence. So we can get some understanding. So it's almost like we get to the most reasonable understanding and not the conclusive, definitive understanding.
You also mentioned that emotions are like information. Similar to the physical information which we get, like if the temperature is low, then we feel cold. So similarly, if there is some action, then we feel the emotion. So my question was that is it also based on the law of nature that if there is low temperature, then the natural instinct is that we will feel cold. But we see that is it possible to change it, like if there is emotional some activities there, then the natural information is that we can become a different emotion is coming. Is it possible to control it that?
To some degree, yes. Some degree, yes, definitely. See, it's an Indian who goes and stays in say New Zealand. New Zealand is quite cold, especially Sydney, or the lower part of the eastern part of Australia or New Zealand, like Sydney and Melbourne. They are very cold. Melbourne is very cold. If everybody goes to Calgary, the western part of Canada, or Vancouver, is extremely cold. Now, if they go there, to some extent, their body will get adapted. And the same level of coldness, they will not feel that cold. And if they come to India, the heat, they may, earlier it was okay, tolerable, now it will become unbearable for them. So the body changes. So like that, the mind also changes. So something which was not tolerable earlier can become tolerable. So the mind changes, but there's a range over it. Now, beyond one's tolerance capacity, there's a particular level of heat above which the body itself will become dysfunctional and damaged and die. Same with respect to cold also. So within a range, our emotional responses can definitely be changed, and we should change them. So that's there's a maladaptation of our emotions. We have to learn to find healthier responses. So emotion is information, but what is the information? That is something which we will have to carefully understand. It is not that the information normally is whatever information we're getting is the right information. Say, for example, consider somebody who takes alcohol. Now, they take alcohol because they're social drinkers. They want to just belong to a particular group of people who they think are cool. Now, to belong to that group, they drink alcohol. And when they belong to that group, people, they just hang out with people, they chat with them, they feel good about themselves. But now, is the good feeling coming from drinking alcohol, or is it coming from being with those people? Wherever it is. Emotion is, I'm feeling good. But after some time, what may happen is, oh, I'm feeling bad, I want to feel good, let me drink. And then drinking, instead of for belonging to a particular group, drinking becomes their coping strategy. And it becomes a coping strategy, then it starts becoming more and more addictive and destructive. So the idea is, emotion is information. But what exactly is the information? That sometimes we may misinterpret the information. That's why to process the informational content of an emotion, we have to use our intelligence. We sometimes need guidance. So, I'm feeling bored. That's emotion. Okay, but then what is the information conveyed is I'm bored. What does it mean? Maybe I had to take more interesting subject. Maybe I had to find more interesting subjects. Maybe life itself is boring and I have to just end my life. That's ridiculous, isn't it? But the point is that emotion is information, and what information we take from it, that is something which we ourselves have to be very, very intelligent. That's dadami buddhi yogam tam. As we practice bhakti, we learn to take better and better information from the emotion. But Parikshit Maharaj was cursed. What did he see that? He said that, okay, I'm cursed. He could have said that, oh, this is so unfair. But this is Krishna's plan. So we have to become expert in that area. We'll take some more questions afterwards. So, yeah. So I have some experience and knowledge of psychological counseling. I very much like the therapists create a safe space so that people take therapy, start trusting the therapist and share any aspect and experience of life. Can we integrate this method of counseling, psychology in youth preaching? Will it be helpful? And can you guide how we can proceed in this direction? Well, professional counseling and preaching cannot go together. Because preaching means we are trying to impart our values to others. The whole idea of counseling is, especially professional counseling is, you are not preaching over them. You are helping that person get in touch with yourself. So professionally, if you start teaching any particular religion, in most countries, you'll be disbarred from practicing. But the broad attitude, so if somebody becomes a professional therapist, they cannot teach a particular religion. Now, if they position themselves as a faith psychologist or faith therapist, and they affiliate with a particular religious organization, like the Catholic Church has every major Catholic center, they have a set of therapists who they recommend. If you have mental health problems, you go to these therapists. And those therapists will give guidance that is not contrary to church principles. So it is possible in some areas. I think there are slowly devotees who are getting into therapy and learning this. So yes, it is important, especially as we are moving towards more and more people being mentally traumatized, mentally wounded by life. We will need devotees and professionals who are devotees who work in this area together. Otherwise, as devotees, we are not necessarily competent to offer counseling for very seriously problematic cases. And even if we want to, the amount of time investment required for that, we don't have that bandwidth. So I'm doing currently a podcast series with one therapist, Mataji from Bhaktivedanta Hospital, about emotional health and spirituality. Basically, we're talking about there are young children who are committing suicide, young kids who are committing suicide. So we did one podcast on the occasion of World Suicide Prevention Day. That was the 10th of last month. And then I was in Melbourne at that time. Now we have to do next on 2nd of October. And it's a vacation. It's going to be online. So slowly devotees are working in this area. And I think you have to find like-minded devotees and explore what are the options for taking this up. But generally, if we think that we can preach through this, then that's not what it is meant for. Like a doctor is meant to offer medical treatment. Now, on top of that, if you have your spirituality, that is okay. Your spirituality cannot replace your medical treatment. Isn't it? Now, if somebody has a heart attack and the heart surgeon who's a devotee says, I promise when I'm doing heart surgery, I'll chant Hare Krishna. So will you do the heart surgery properly? I can't guarantee that I'll chant Hare Krishna. Even if that patient is a devotee, that patient will say, I want to go back to Krishna, but not so soon. So, we cannot, I cannot overemphasize this principle that if we are in a particular profession, we have to do what is expected of that profession. Our spirituality can be a bonus on top of it. Our spirituality cannot replace what is expected of that profession. Say, to consider example for this, suppose some top cricketer, maybe Virat Kohli is retired, but Virat Kohli was a devotee. And say there's an India-Pakistan cricket match. World Cup finals and Asia Cup finals over there, whatever. And India loses that match. And Virat Kohli is the captain. And after the match gets over and there's a post-match interview. And the interviewer asks, what happened? Why did India lose the match? He says, win, loss, all this is temporary. Chant Hare Krishna and be happy. You cannot imagine a more damaging form of anti-preaching. It's a perfectly valid and valuable message. But if you have failed at your job and then you are using spirituality to justify your failure, that will alienate people, antagonize people from spirituality. So our spirituality has to be in addition to our job, not in replacement of our job. If we are doing a particular role, we have to do that role properly. And then additionally, as is appropriate, we can talk about spirituality. So this actually happened with George Harrison. George Harrison started doing, he met Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, have songs about Krishna, sing songs about Krishna. And in his concerts, that people would come, thousands of people would come to attend, he told them, chant Hare Krishna. And people had come expecting the kind of music he had been producing. And they paid for that. And he told them to chant. They started throwing bottles and throwing tomatoes and throwing eggs on him. And all the reviews started panning him, saying that, this George Harrison was such a great musical talent. And he got involved with this Hare Krishna cult. And the world has lost such a great musical talent. So he met Srila Prabhupada. He told us. Prabhupada said that. He said that, Prabhupada, for everyone, you told me to make songs about Krishna. And he said, for one person I'm bringing to closer to Krishna, I feel 100 people I'm driving away from Krishna. What should I do? So Prabhupada said, use your intelligence, balance it out. Then he started making the kind of songs that he was making before. And in between, he would bring in a little bit of Krishna. And then the media started saying, oh, George Harrison is back. He's out of this cult now. So after that, he largely hid his Hare Krishna affiliation. And then in between, he would bring Krishna into his songs. So Arjuna, when he was on the battlefield, he did not say, okay, there's no need to fight. I just put my bow down, chant Hare Krishna. The enemies will be killed. If India was in Operation Sindoor and the soldiers there say that, okay, we'll chant Hare Krishna, Krishna will take care of Pakistani aggressors. No, that will not work. Whatever area we are working in, Krishna says, Loka Sangraha. Loka Sangraha is very, very important. That Loka Sangraha is where we have to play our part in maintaining the world. And if we are taking a responsibility, we have to do that responsibility. Somebody cannot take salary from the Indian army and then say, oh, this war is just mundane politics. I don't want to kill anyone. I don't want to fight. Well, if that is your value, then don't join the army. Don't take salary from the army. So if we are going to go into therapy, our goal should be to heal people emotionally. It is not to preach Krishna consciousness. Now, while healing people emotionally, if we can give them Krishna, that's fair enough. Just like we have Bhaktivedanta Hospital in Mumbai, where we treat people physically, And while treating people physically, there's also a spiritual care department where we offer spiritual care to people and people benefit from that. But if we are offering spiritual care without offering medical care, it would lead to a disaster. So sometimes we face career reversal or material loss. We have tendency to blame our spiritual advancement or the time invested in spirituality. How to deal with this thought process? Well, we all need guidance. We all need intelligence and guidance to balance our life. When Yudhishthira becomes the king in Indraprastha, Narad Muni comes to him and tells him that you have 3 areas in your life and balance all 3 of them. He says there is dharma, artha and kama. So he says, we could say dharma is our spirituality, broadly speaking. Artha is our job and the kama is our family. So he says, don't pursue profit, which comes from the job. Don't pursue profit at the cost of religion and pleasure. Don't pursue pleasure at the cost of profit and religion. And don't pursue religion at the cost of profit and pleasure. So balance it all out. So we all need to learn that balance. And if we are getting into spirituality so much that it is affecting our career, then we may have to decide that, okay, this level of spiritual commitment may be possible for me at a later stage. At this stage, I need to balance things. Now, so that is the principle. Now, specifically, if we face a setback, was it because of our spirituality? Maybe it was, maybe it was not. The mind always is looking for a scapegoat, and Krishna consciousness can easily become a scapegoat. So we have to carefully evaluate. That okay, how much time did I spend over here? And because of this time, this happened. Is it factually true or not? If it's factually true, then we take corrective measures. And this Bhaktivedanta hospital was started in Mumbai. So Radhanath Maharaj was the primary spiritual guide over there. So he told the doctors, for the smooth functioning of this hospital, all of you should function in the mode of goodness, irrespective of whether you are above it or below it. What he meant by that is, if a surgeon has to do some surgery and they say, my spiritual master is giving Bhagavatam class, so I have to go for the Bhagavatam class. No, if it is an emergency surgery, you have to be available for that. So being in mode of goodness means responsible. So we all need to be responsible in our functioning. How do we use deep analytical thought process to improve our daily life issues? Focus in job, work, habits, etc. It depends. For each one of us, we need to decide how much analysis is too much for us. If you consider what is deep thinking and what is overthinking. How do you know the difference? So since my childhood, I used to have a lot of questions. So I would ask questions to my teachers, I would ask questions to others. And many of my teachers would say, you think too much. And I would not reply this to my teachers, but my friends would also say that you think too much. So my default retort in my mind was, you think too little. So how do you know something is deep thinking and something is overthinking? So the idea is that when we are doing deep thinking versus when we are doing overthinking. When we do deep thinking, we go into an issue, we explore it from various perspectives, get a multidimensional view and come out with a clearer understanding. When we are doing overthinking, we just get caught in the issue and keep going round and round and round and round and round without getting any clarity. So we have to see what level of analysis can help us to get a clearer understanding. And when does that analysis is becoming too much? So generally, when we think about an issue, we get clarity. If we keep thinking about it, the clarity doesn't come, just get stagnate. If you think too much, then the clarity goes down. So thinking to this level is sattva. Where by sattvat sanjayate jnanam. But then if you go too much, rajasas tu phalam dukkham. Just a waste of time. And then pramada mohoyavacha. That in tamas we just become mad. We just become totally confused. So each of us will have, based on our capacity, our situation, we have to find out where my thinking is being productive and when it is becoming unproductive or counterproductive. Then we stop at that time. So if intent is also a part of determining what is karma, then that thought process also affect in performing any action result. Yes, thought process does affect. And Kali Yuga, we are not held responsible for our thoughts. But if you keep thinking about something that will lead to us doing that thing eventually, that's why it is better to be careful about our thoughts also. Okay. So if you are trying to change a tendency and we are failing repeatedly, then what can we do to gradually change the tendency? Well, we have to choose our battles. Like say now India has Pakistan as an enemy, China has an enemy. Now India has taken some action against Pakistan. We haven't taken much strong action against China. Why? Because we're not strong enough right now. So like that we have different anarthas. Now we may have anger, we may have lust, we may have greed, we may have jealousy. Now one of them might be like Pakistan, one of them might be China. Now if India had wasted all of its energy in fighting with China, we would not have made any success. We just exhausted ourselves with it. So we have to choose our battles. So which conditionings can I deal with right now? Which conditioning I cannot deal with right now? And I cannot deal with it doesn't mean we are letting China just walk over India. It's not that China is just continuously conquering Indian territory and we're letting them conquer. We set some parameters, some boundaries. But it's not that we are taking the fight to China. Does that mean we will never take the fight? Maybe we will in the future. So choose your battles. That decide among particular anarthas. Some anarthas, they may be just too strong to deal with right now. See, Krishna says the anarthas are real things. So sometimes some metaphors are given, and those metaphors, they are useful to a particular point. But no metaphor captures the reality completely. So what do I mean by that? There's a metaphor sometimes we use that there was this baby elephant which is tied by a rope. And the baby elephant grows up. And in its childhood, it tried to break the rope or break the chain. It couldn't break. And then it stops trying to break. So now it has the capacity to break, but it can't break. Or it doesn't break. So like that, its anarthas are more a conditioning of the mind. Well, yes and no. The chain is real. And some chains may be so thick that even an adult elephant cannot break the chain. So some chains may think that, okay, the childhood elephant could not break it. The adult elephant can break it. So that's why anarthas are real things. It's not that kama, lust, is not just a desire that comes within us. Lust is also a conditioning that is there inside us. Krishna says, Indriyani manobadhir asya adhisthana muchyati. It is permanently there inside us. And sometimes it pops up. Sometimes it becomes very strong. But it is permanently there inside us. In some people, it may be very strong. Some people, it may not be that strong. So choose your battles. Try to see which battles we can fight at present and which battles we need to fight later. Another point is that, see, we all have these urges. And these urges, it's not that those urges are constantly high. There are phases when the urges have surges. So when the surges are there, we may feel that's unbearable. We just can't do anything about it. And that may be true. But then, even if we can't resist the urges, we can persist between the urges. Okay, when anger comes up, I just can't do this. When this comes up, I just can't do anything. But when it is not there, what are we doing? If at that time we are consistently practicing bhakti, at that time we are consistently trying to purify ourselves, then gradually with time what will happen is that the same anarthas, the urges they will come less frequently, and they'll come of a lesser magnitude also. It will happen with time. So, we have to choose our battles. I'll explore this answer a little bit more about we may fail to deal with certain conditionings. So I mentioned 3 different things. First is that choose your battles. Some anarthas may be very difficult to overcome at present. Second is that even if they overcome at a particular time, don't define yourself solely by that. That, okay, it happened, but then it is not happening all the time. It's not that the craving is that strong all the time. But I shouldn't. What am I doing at the rest of the time? So am I continuing my practice of bhakti? Am I trying to purify myself? If I am, then gradually I'll become stronger. The third point that I'll talk about is that, see, we talked about conditions and conditionings. Now, there could be negative conditionings and there could be negative conditions. And the worst situation is where both of them come together. So it's like we have conditions that can be positive or they can be negative. And we can have conditionings. And generally we use the word conditionings in a negative sense, but it doesn't have to. Conditioning refers to the impression of the mind. They can be positive and they can be negative. So now the most dangerous situation for us is where by destiny, we could say. Because by destiny means by circumstance, we are put in a negative situation. And at that very time, suddenly a strong conditioning also gets triggered inside us. Say suppose somebody is trying to fight alcoholism. They're trying to recover from alcohol. And they're working in a particular job, and for that job they have to go to a retreat, they have to go some training center or wherever, and in the training center they have, after the training session, they have a big party and everybody is drinking over there. So by destiny they are put in that situation. You can say it's not destiny, it's their choice, they took that job, but it's not that people have freedom to take whatever job they want all the time. So it was not that they went to a bar themselves. They just went for a corporate retreat, and by destiny it happened that remember I use the word destiny for uncontrollables, things beyond our control. So they are put in a situation where everybody is drinking. And that is the time they also have a weak moment. Wondering what is the big deal, who will come to know, what's the issue. So now this is the worst situation to be in, where we are in a dangerous condition, and at that same time a dangerous conditioning also pops. And this can be very, very difficult. So it's like, I have a friend in the Indian Army. So he was telling about Pahalgam. What happened over there is that somehow, for some reason, the defense forces were lax, or the defensive arrangements at a particular place were not proper. And that was the very time the terrorists attacked. That's what happened in Israel also with respect to with October 7. That their defenses are normally very strong. For some reason, their defenses were weak. And that's the time when the Hamas attacked. So that's a deadly combination when the external attack is heavy and the internal defenses are low. So the internal defenses refer to our conditionings. Internal defenses being low means our negative conditionings are popping up. And the external attack being high means what? That is the time when the temptation comes up in outside. So broadly speaking, the 11th canto says that when we succumb to sense gratification, that when there is sense gratification or sense indulgence, it can happen in 2 ways. One is that the senses go to the sense objects. That means it's more like a inside out thing. We first get the desire and then we search for the sense objects. And the second is the sense objects come to the senses. That means what happens is we are just going around a normal life But suddenly in the course of our normal life, a very attractive sense object comes up, captivates us. So sense indulgence can happen in both ways. Now, we may say senses going toward the sense objects is more of we choosing to do certain things. And that is true. And sense objects coming in the path of our senses directly, that is more of destiny. So let's, with this analysis, take the example of Ajamil. In Ajamil's case, what happened? Did the senses go to the sense object or sense object came to the senses? Yes. Let's look at the stages one by one. So the first stage was the sense object came to the senses. That means he was going along a normal life. In fact, not even normal life. It's a pious life. It was said that he was going out to collect firewood for his father. And from what is this, there's no further description much in the Bhagavatam or in the Acharya's commentaries. It is not described specifically he was going to a new place where he had never gone before to collect firewood. No, he was just going where he would normally go. And there it happened that he saw this particular couple who were doing very explicit activities. Now we can say this was completely 100% destiny. There was nothing that he did to get into that. So, say we are visiting some site like Wikipedia or somewhere, we're getting some information. There, somehow from somewhere, some obscene pop-up comes up. So now, it's not that we have gone to some site where such pop-ups are expected. It just comes up over there. So it's almost like that. So that is 100% destiny. Now somehow he saw that, he got agitated, but he pulled himself out of it. And he came back. But he came back and somehow that thought, that image, that desire stayed with him. And then after that, what are the next thing that happened? Then the senses went to the sense object. So he went to that particular prostitute. Now, can this be called destiny? Well, this is where it becomes difficult, isn't it? That is, now we can say that this is certainly, nobody can call this as 100% destiny. Now still, we could say that he was unprepared and he was ambushed and he was overwhelmed. What he did was terrible, what very wrong thing to do. But still we could say maybe the fact that he was put in that situation, the fact he got that particular desire, that was still, you can say, maybe 80% destiny, 20% his free will. 20% is karma. Just the desire was so strong that he just couldn't resist it. Maybe you can say it was destiny. It was not destiny. It was just that what he saw at that particular time, that had such an impact that he was pulled by that desire. And he just couldn't resist it. Okay, but after this, now, one time succumbing to something can be, it is bad, but it can be circumstantial. But then what did he do? After that, he decided that not only that I once want to be with her, I want to be always with her. And therefore, he rejected his wife. He rejected his parents who were elderly. Now, he was a Brahmana. Now, if a Brahmana has rejected his family and is staying with a prostitute, who will want such a Brahmana to come and do their Vivaha ceremony? Who will want them to come and do the marriage ceremony or the name giving ceremony or any other pious activity? If you are living in sin, how will we want you to do some pious activity for us? So naturally, because of this, he lost his job also. And then he had to start robbing. So he had to start robbing and stealing, and he became almost like a full criminal. So now, after that, it's like not the senses going to the sense objects, it's like senses, they are bonded to the sense objects. Now, to form this bond, he had to actually break a lot of boundaries. It's one thing is, say, the defensive wall that was there between Palestine and Israel. Hamas use some means to break it down, and they attack once. But now, if after that you don't build the wall, okay, once the wall was broken, now let's break the remaining wall also. You break the remaining wall, that means you don't want to defend yourself. So what he did was, so you could say here the first wall was broken. Or you can say first time, wall means the wall of dharma, the wall of right behavior, wall was broken. But then here, and it was partly broken. One wrong thing was done. But here, he went down and he himself fully broke the wall. So this is where we could say, this part, we can call it was circumstantial wrong. That he was put in circumstances and he did something wrong. But here, it becomes totally intentional wrong. So circumstantial wrong can be attributed to destiny. We are put in a particular circumstance and we succumbed over there. It's still bad, but it is attributable to destiny. But so that means the defensive wall around us was somehow broken and we were attacked and we fell. But then if we ourselves go out of the way, intentional means what? We are creating the circumstances. Rather than being trapped in the circumstances, we are creating the circumstances to do that wrong. So to go back to the question once again, that when some conditions pop up and we are just not able to resist them, then that means, okay, for some time we will not be able to resist them. But after that, do we decide that, okay, I'm going to build the walls again? Or is it that, okay, this wall was broken now, why keep the wall on? Let me break it down fully. So that will determine what our eventual fate will be. So that's why what I said is, here, if you go back, we can't resist the urges. That means, sometimes we can't resist the urges means what? Internally the desire has become very high and externally also the temptation comes. Then we might succumb. But do we make that state easier to happen in the future? Or do we make that state more difficult to happen in the future? If we are creating boundaries for ourselves so that, it's not that easy to do that again. We are creating defensive walls for ourselves. Then we'll be protected. And one last point I'll make, that even with respect to boundaries, the boundaries don't have to be digital. It doesn't have to be like a 1-0 thing. It can also be analog. Analog means what? That any case of boundary, like say India with respect to China. Now, there is some disputed territory in Doklam, there is some place in Arunachal Pradesh. Now, there is some dispute about whether something belongs to India, something belongs to China. China may have occupied some Indian territory. China claims that India has occupied some of their territory. Now, we may not be able to get back all the territory that China has occupied. In 1960s, we had a war and we lost and they took some territory. But they taken some territory does not mean that we are going to let them come and take New Delhi also. That doesn't mean that we are going to let them come and take Kolkata and take Mumbai. No, just so there could be one boundary that is aspirational. Aspirational boundary means that this is the level I would like to be at. So, for example, I don't even want to have any lusty thoughts. That could be an aspirational boundary. But then we could have a non-negotiable boundary. Non-negotiable boundary would be, no matter what happens, below this level, I am never going to go. See, we all have anger within us. Now, we may say my aspirational level is that I'll never get angry. Now, what does the never get angry mean? That it could mean that I'll never raise my voice against anyone. That could be aspirational level. But if we can't be at the aspirational level, sometimes we may raise our voice. But we may decide, no matter what happens, I am not going to use foul words. I'm not going to speak obscenities. That is, in any cultured society, that is expected. However angry you get, you don't use this kind of language over here. Isn't it? So, anger management can also be on a sliding scale. That just because we raise our voice, which we maybe shouldn't have raised our voice, just because we raise our voice does not mean we have lost the battle against anger. But okay, even if I raise my voice, this is a level below which I'm not going to go. So that way, when we are trying to deal with our anarthas also, instead of thinking of it at 1-0, even if I succumb, I won't succumb below this level. That way, so, Prabhupada talked about, say, for example, fourth regulative, no illicit sex. Now, Prabhupada gave that also like a spectrum. The aspirational level is sex only for procreation. But all the initiation lectures that Prabhupada had, in the initiation lectures when Prabhupada talks about no illicit sex, he defines in those initiation lectures that no illicit sex means no sex outside marriage. So, from sex only for procreation to sex within marriage, that's a spectrum, that's a range. Now, sex outside marriage will be adharma. That is a non-negotiable. So, like that, when we talk about standards also, we can have a range. Now, based on a particular society that we are in, a particular ashram that we are in, a particular responsibility we are in, what that range will vary from person to person. So, but that range is required. And so if we have this understanding it's a range, then we won't think, okay, if I have not won the war, that means I have lost the war. No, I could not win it at this level, but that does not mean I'm going to lose beyond this level. So that way, our conditionings may sometimes drag us down. So we would like to be at this level, but because of our conditionings, we may drag down. But we may decide this is a boundary below which I'm never going to go, no matter what happens. And that is something which, see, forget spiritual life. Even in daily life, we all have this understanding of certain level of boundaries. That, see, mainstream society is quite sexually liberal. But even in that, say westernized liberal society, there is a boundary that most people respect. That is consent. So a person cannot force themselves on another person. Now, of course, there are people who do that, but that's a crime. So most law-abiding people will not do that. So the idea is that now consent is not dharma. Of course not. Dharma is a much higher boundary. But my point is this idea of boundaries is universal. Nobody can live without boundaries. Now, what is the boundary? That will vary from person to person. I was speaking in Amazon and the question came, okay, is morality relative or is it absolute? So, now generally the mainstream idea is, morality is relative. If you believe that is wrong, it is wrong. If you don't think it is wrong, if I think it is not wrong, then it is not wrong. But then I asked the person to ask this question. So, this was Amazon in Seattle, in America. So, I asked them that, is there any activity right now that somebody is doing that is wrong? Yes, of course. The terrorists killing innocent people. There are rapists. There are child sex offenders. So I asked him that do the people who do this think that they are doing it wrong? They think that they're doing it wrong? It doesn't matter whether they think it is. He answers, it doesn't matter. It is wrong. So I said, that means you yourself are saying that morality is not relative. They don't think it is wrong, but what they think doesn't matter, you're saying. It is wrong. Isn't it? So after class, one person came to meet me. He was like one of the top managers in Amazon in that place. So he said that, in our company also, like there is a whole section in Amazon for apparel. Apparel is clothes. So normally when they're selling clothes, they will show people wearing clothes. Men, women wearing clothes, so that people will buy those clothes. But they say that when it is children's clothes, we won't show children wearing those clothes. Because their idea is that there are sexual predators who may prey on children. And we don't want to trigger any such sexual desire there. So they also have a boundary over there. So the idea is that everybody has boundaries. What the boundaries are there, that may vary from person to person. So for us, we need to decide that by destiny is force, I may not be able to stick at this level of boundary. But from this level boundary, can I say that whatever level I go down, it's all destiny? No. Now, by destiny, I may get angry and may yell at you for 5 minutes. But there is a difference between anger and hate. Anger is what? Anger is temporary. Anger is hot-headed. And sometimes we get angry and we don't even know what we are doing. But hate is not hot-headed. Hate is cold-blooded. Cold-blooded means what? I'll deliberately plan. I'll get you to this, get you over here, and you will be unaware, you'll be unprepared, and that's the time I'll hurt you the most. So anger might be because of destiny. But hate is because of karma. You choose to be hateful. So anger is hot-headed. Hot-headed means just at that particular time, the head becomes hot and we do something. But hate is cold-blooded. So in this way, there is a difference that by destiny, certain conditioning may be very strong and we may not be able to overcome those conditionings. And there are flexible boundaries. Like there's, say, in the Vedic tradition itself, Brahmacharya ashram is one boundary. Grahastha ashram is another boundary. But both are boundaries. So the idea is there is a range of boundaries. But ultimately, everybody has to learn to live within boundaries. And we all need to have certain level of boundary which is non-negotiable for us. No matter what happens, this is something which I will never do. Okay? Yes, please.
Thank you for explaining the mind. Especially, I like that you explained the mind is a transmitter as well as transformer. And the way the mind transforms is through the impressions. And the past impressions should be vritti or vasana. And there is something called purvagraha, or produces. So produces, which Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks a lot about it, in Bhakti Avaloka and the places, because of our intellectual conception and perception, which are not aligned with the Shastric conclusion and the way Acharyas have explained the pathway and understanding. So that traditions which are deep rooted, how do we overcome it? Because vasana, it's easier to overcome compared to the pravagrahas or the traditions. So how do we get on trying to overcome this?
Can you give an example of what you mean by that?
For example, let's say that someone happens to be communist. Someone happens to be communist. And he is very much convinced about the idea of communism. And for him to accept the Vedic truth and the Vedic guideline, it's very difficult. Somebody could be very...
Yeah, I got your overall point. Got your point. Thank you. So, see, there is in the Vedic tradition an incremental approach also. Like, say, when Rugari was met with by Narad Muni, Narad Muni didn't tell him stop killing. He told him what? Kill the animal full. So it's like sometimes from a terrible level to get a person to a less terrible level. That is also a step up. So Prabhupada, for example, when he was talking about communism, he talked about spiritual communism. So Prabhupada didn't say you have to reject communism. So you can spiritualize it. Now, we could say communism itself is aggressively anti-religion. And yes, the greatest ever attack against religion, which happened against Christianity, was in Soviet Russia, where thousands and thousands of churches were destroyed, and I'm talking about recent times, not in medieval times. Islam destroyed a lot of other temples in other places. Not Islam, radical Islam, you could say similarly. But the thing is that it has happened. So communism was quite aggressively anti-religion. But then the basic value within communism is that some people have concentrated their wealth, have taken all the wealth, and most people are in poverty. And there should be some level of equality. So now, how that equality is to be achieved, and whether by having a central authority of state to decide that, okay, we'll redistribute wealth with everyone, will that really work? The questions to be addressed. So my understanding is that some people may be more from a left-wing ideology. Some people may be from a right-wing ideology. And they will, it's very, very difficult for somebody from a left-wing ideology to suddenly become a right-winger. And for a right-winger to be left-winger. How many of you have heard this word left and right? Okay. Don't raise your left and right hands over here. So, what is left and right basically? See, the idea is that basically, okay, I'm going on detour right now, but it's an important question. So, how should I put it? That in general, there is an existing social structure. So, generally the right are conservative. The right is concerned with what is right in the existing social structure. And they want to preserve it. The right says, this society has worked for thousands of years. And it is you are a problem. You fit into the system. You adjust yourself and things will be fine. So right is concerned about what is right in the existing system. Right in the system. Now the left is concerned about those who are left out by the system. You say the system is working, but the system is not working. For so many people, the system has not been working. So the right focuses on individual change. You change yourself and you fit into the system. The left focuses on social change, social justice. Society itself has to be changed. Because this whole system is not working and we have to change the society itself. Now, who is right? Well, it's not that the right is always right. Sometimes the society itself has become corrupted. The social system has to change. Sometimes the individual has to change. Yesterday, I talked about dharma as individual to collective and collective to individual. Isn't it? So the conservatives say that the right says that as an individual, you fit better into the system. You contribute better to the system. System will help you grow. The left says the system has to do better. Now sometimes, so both could be right. So my point is that generally any thought system that is there is something right in the thought system and there's something wrong. Now, I'm not saying it's 50%, 50%. That could be 90% wrong and 10% right also. But we have to find out what is right in that thought system. And then help that person connect with that right part. And then whatever is the wrong part, that will be gradually dealt with. So I would say somebody who's come from a leftist ideology, for them to accept the Varnashram aspect of Krishna consciousness is going to be extremely difficult. For them, Varnashram will seem just like caste. Now, if that is the case, then okay, we have to tell them, okay, stop. Okay, don't worry about Varnashram. Anyway, we are not trying to impose Varnashram on your society. You practice Krishna consciousness, chant Hare Krishna, you understand the teaching principles of our spiritual core and bhakti, and grow in your life. So for them, maybe throughout their life, they will not be able to accept Varnashram. Now, can they go back to Godhead without accepting Varnashram? Well, if they develop love for Krishna, they can. Krishna says, Antakale cha maameva smaran muktva kalevaram. So, relationship with Krishna and love for Krishna, how much it depends on giving up particular intellectual conceptions. I'm not sure about that. The different devotees will have different opinions about it. But from what I have seen within our movement since I've been traveling for the last 10 years across the world, that many devotees themselves have different opinions about, say, for example, what is Varnashram? How are we to implement in society? So now evolution, for example. Now I know many devotees who are like, I know a devotee with a double PhD in evolution, and he says there is no way I can ever believe that I will ever accept evolution is wrong. So he says, whenever a devotee is giving arguments criticizing evolution, I just laugh at them. He said that anybody with a first year knowledge of postgraduate and graduate level evolution knowledge, he can just demolish all the arguments that devotees are giving. Now, is it true? Maybe it is. So then, now within evolution, there's a whole range over there. That there is, in all the interactions we devotees had with Prabhupada, nobody asked Prabhupada about theistic evolution. See, Prabhupada has always presented evolution as atheistic. By what do you mean theistic evolution? That if evolution is like the law of gravity, does the law of gravity exist? It exists. Does it disprove the existence of God? No, it does not. So could evolution be a mechanism through which Krishna has made the species manifest in this world? Maybe it is. We don't know. Now, there's a lot of intellectual jugglery we'll have to do to see, okay, the Bhagavatam describes Brahma and other things. So devotee said that is describing the higher planetary systems. Brahma, Manu and Diti and all that. How life came on earth, that's not described in the Bhagavatam. So now I don't agree with that argument completely. My point is that if somebody cannot give up evolution, should they not practice bhakti? Or should we say that if you're not giving up evolution, don't chant Hare Krishna, don't practice bhakti? No, now that devotee, who I said is a triple PhD in evolution, is a very prominent devotee, does lots of services, is very influential in mainstream society, in the scientific community, and in the devotee community. So I told him I appreciate that you found a community where you were accepted. In many communities you might be guilted and shamed and you might just leave bhakti. So somebody who has not studied evolution, okay, they say this is what Shastra says, I reject evolution, you reject evolution, that's okay. Somebody else may not be able to reject evolution. So now if you study Ayurveda, especially you study Sushruta and others, there's a lot in Ayurveda which talks about evolution, some things like evolution, like how species change and how, not exactly species change, how things adapt themselves. I'm not going to into defense of evolution. My point is that what intellectual conception is categorically wrong. So I would say in aspirational to non-negotiable. If somebody says the implication of evolution is no God exists, then such a person cannot be Krishna conscious. If somebody goes from accepting evolution to accepting atheistic evolution, or rather atheism as an implication of evolution, or atheism as a necessary precondition of evolution, then that becomes non-negotiable. That's what happened with respect to the moon landing when India had the Chandrayaan mission. So then several devotees asked me, Prabhupada apparently said the man didn't go to the moon. How do you understand? So I made a video about it. I said Prabhupada has given 6 different kinds of statements. Prabhupada said that maybe they didn't go out of the earth at all. They went out of the earth, but they went somewhere else, some other planet. They went to the moon, but they didn't access the moon. Because the moon is a higher planet, they couldn't access it. They went to the moon and they just got back some dust particles. What was the use of it all? There, the Prabhupada says, oh, they have spent so much effort in going to the moon. Why don't they spend so much effort in raising their consciousness? There's a whole spectrum of statements that Prabhupada has given. So why take only one and say, if you have to be faithful to Prabhupada, you have to accept that man didn't go to the moon? No, Prabhupada made a range of statements. Now somebody may say that Prabhupada made these statements more and made these statements less. That's okay, that's possible. But Prabhupada has made all those statements. So I would say that this whole idea that we have to become like a thought police and eradicate or annihilate certain thought processes, I think that is dangerous. That can lead to a lot of, that can make devotees stop thinking. And if devotees stop thinking, then if, God forbid, if some power hungry person grabs power and nobody raises questions against them, then that's how fanatical religion comes up. You know, one of my friends has done his PhD in California. Has done his PhD in terrorism. They don't use the word terrorism; they call it radicalism. So, what radicalizes people? So, when the Islamic states had spread, like many Europeans and even some Americans, not Muslims, whites who had been born in America and Europe, they joined IS, Islamic States. Now, why would they do that? And so some of them, they left and came back, and some of them were there. So he actually did an interview of many of these people who joined terror, become terrorists, radicalists. So one of the things is that they basically felt that the world is so complex, and Islam gave us a very black and white identity. This is right, this is wrong, and that's all there is to the world. So we didn't have to think anymore. Now, that's a very dangerous state to be. Somebody thinks, I have accepted, basically what, I have accepted this, I don't have to think anything more. Then somebody else will do the thinking for you and can monstrously misuse you and manipulate you. See, if Krishna had wanted Arjuna to outsource his thinking to him, so Krishna could have finished the whole Bhagavad-gita in 6 words. I am God, obey me, fight. Bhagavad-gita Sampurnam. Krishna did not do that. Krishna helped Arjuna to improve and empower his thinking. And the test of it is that when later on Ashwatthama had to be punished, Krishna did not give any guidance to Arjuna. Arjuna arrived at his own decision and Krishna approved of that decision. And then later on, when Krishna departed from the world, at that time Arjuna remembered and took shelter in the Bhagavad-gita. So in one sense, Krishna was preparing Arjuna. Krishna was not giving ready-made decisions to Arjuna. Krishna was preparing Arjuna to take decisions in a way that would be mature and responsible and spiritually harmonious. So I think that I'm not sure whether this idea that can you categorically say that everything about a particular conception is wrong? And who is going to decide? Say, as if some devotee says communism is wrong, or some devotee says capitalism is wrong. Some devotees, I see so many devotees get caught in this. Like when the vaccination came, I was just talking with one spiritual master. I was there in Australia. So he said almost 25 of his disciples, they rejected him because he refused to condemn vaccines. So he said, and he knows one more Prabhupada sannyasi disciple, he said that almost more than 75 of his disciples, they rejected him. So there are devotees who became anti-vax campaigners. These vaccines are all a global conspiracy and we should not be taking vaccines. Simple living, high thinking means no vaccines. Now, is that the central idea of ISKCON? Certainly not. Now, can devotees be pro-vaccine or can devotees be anti-vaccine? Well, that is up to individual devotee. Don't make it a Krishna conscious issue, isn't it? So, can devotees have positions on vaccines? Of course. But can you say that if a devotee is pro-vaccine, he is debating for Krishna consciousness? And if a devotee is anti-vaccine, that devotee is debating for Krishna consciousness? That is taking, that is like becoming intellectual police. And we don't need to do that. Who is going to decide that? That, this particular ideology is wrong. Like say, organ donation. Should devotees donate their organs? Now, I've talked with several devotees. ISKCON as a movement has not really matured enough that we have a body of scholars who will deliberate on these issues and give proper statements. So, I have had different devotees talking about different things about this. That some devotees say that, if that person misuses the organ after you give it, then you will get the karma for that. So, better don't give it. I know other devotees who say that, after you as a soul have left your body, why are you so attached to that body that you are going to control what happens to that body? If with that body something good can happen to someone else, why not let it happen? And if that person misuses it, that's up to them. So here, again, it goes to, I discuss the intent, content and effect. So some devotees may look at the effect and say, there can be a bad effect of this. But some devotees can look at the intent and say, your intent is good, do it. So should ISKCON make an official policy that no ISKCON devotee should ever donate their organs? or all ISKCON devotees should donate their organs. No, we should not become thought police like that. So I think that idea itself, that somebody should be controlling what intellectual conception somebody has, as long as those intellectual conceptions are not affecting our personal relationship with Krishna. Now, this particular devotee who I talked about evolution. So, if you look at him, he is a very, very dedicated devotee. And when another devotee was in the final stages of his life, and that devotee wanted to go to Mayapur and things like that, this devotee, he used all the influence he had so that he could arrange for that devotee to stay in Mayapur, and he did a lot of service. My point is that if you look at that devotee, there's no doubting his devotion. So that's why it's like there can be different people with different conceptions. There can be left-wingers who are devotees, there can be right-wingers who are devotees. But there can be left-wingers who can be violently anti-devotional, and there can be right-wingers who are violently anti-devotional. I know right-wingers, they say, you ISKCON people, you always talk about you're not the body or the soul, and you do nothing for society. You do nothing for dharma. And they are quite violently anti-devotional. I'm oversimplifying their argument. So rather than thinking that the whole Upanishads give basically intellectual room for people to use their intellectual ability. So just as we give room for desires, and different people can have different desires, and still they can move towards Krishna. So like that, different people can have different intellectual conceptions, they can move towards Krishna. We are not intellectual Mayavadis, that everybody has to have the same intellectual set of conception. No, we want to have harmonization, not homogenization. Harmonization is that all of us have the same ultimate purpose. Homogenization is every one of us thinks exactly alike. That is a dangerous expectation to have. Okay? Thank you. Yes, please. Where's the mind?
So we just want to discuss the case of Chaitanya, that in the beginning it was circumstantial, but later it was intentional, how it gradually fell down. Last year we were discussing that we were discussing a concept where we were discussing a concept from Madhurya Kadambini, where we were discussing that it is like we are walking near the border of a cliff, and we are taking one step towards the border of the cliff, and when we step off the cliff, then we are falling, and while we are falling, we cannot change, we cannot do anything about it. Can you please explain the thing?
See, broadly, once we choose an action, we cannot choose the consequence of that action. Our choice is when we do an action. After the action is done, the consequence will come its own. So that's the idea, that if you step off a cliff, then gravity is going to take over. So now, what this means is that every choice will have consequences. But some choices, they have far bigger consequences than others. Like somebody may lie. Lying is not a good thing. Again, related to the same point, in the Mahabharata, there's a discussion between Bhishma and Yudhishthir, that there is the moral and there is the legal. So, should everything immoral be made illegal? So, for example, if somebody speaks lies. Now, should the police be catching everybody who speaks lies and punishing them? Well, don't the police have anything better to do in life? The lying is not good. But what happens is that if somebody lies on the legal document, if somebody lies while giving testimony in court, then there will be much more severe consequences. So the point is that we all make choices, and sometimes some choices are small, in the sense that Even if we make a wrong choice, it doesn't make much difference. But once we develop that habit of making a wrong choice, then and we are not even conscious we are making a wrong choice, then we may make a wrong choice at a point where the consequences could be huge. So that's why catching the wrong choices when we are making them, even when the consequences are small, that is much better. So we are going off the track and this is the road and we are going off the road toward the cliff. One step toward the cliff, no problem. Second step toward the cliff, no problem. 10 steps away from the road, big problem. So just because a wrong choice has had no consequence does not mean all wrong choices will have no consequences. So some choice points are far bigger than others. And when we will be encountering a sudden big choice point, we may not realize that. That's why it's better to try to make good choices on a regular basis. Is it clear what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I was also asking how right now we are discussing that in the beginning it was circumstantial, that he had seen that scene on the.
Yeah, so see, okay, I got your point. See, we all do some mistakes and those mistakes are difficult. Some of them are difficult to forgive, but some are forgivable. So, see, when he was rejecting his wife, when he was rejecting his parents, would something inside him not have felt, hey, maybe I'm doing something wrong? Would his parents have not protested? Would his wife not have protested? Would society, elders not have warned him? And he rejected all of them. So, when we start breaking down the boundaries that are protecting us, at that time, when somebody warns us against it, somebody urges us to stop, and we don't stop, then it becomes a problem. So now exactly when it becomes a big problem, that might be exact point may be difficult to decide. But so from the circumstantial, when does it become intentional? Broadly, my understanding is that circumstantial means the circumstances comes upon us. Intentional means we create the circumstance. Now exactly which circumstance was at what point did this change from here to here, that may be difficult to say. But clearly from here to here there is a difference, isn't it? So he seeing that prostitute while he had gone for doing his duty, and he now living with that prostitute. You cannot say this was destiny. So that's why we all need to define, we need to establish and erect our own boundaries, construct those boundaries beforehand. That no matter what happens, this is what I'm never going to do. And we need to be aware of our boundaries. If we are not aware of our boundaries, then we'll be keep crossing boundaries one after another, after another, after another, after another. We won't realize how far we have gone. And then one day we find we have just gone too far. Is that okay? So if our conditionings are, if we want to make a best possible choice, but we have our conditioning and our attachments, don't they restrict us? Yes, they do. That's why we have to make the best choice within whatever conditionings we have. So we may not be able to make the best choice absolutely, but within whatever conditioning I have, say if I have a fracture, or if I have a weak limb because of fracture which is recovering. So I cannot lift up a 10 kg weight. But can I lift a 1 kg weight? Can I lift a half a kg weight? Well, maybe half a kg is possible. So ultimately, it requires honesty with ourselves. That in this situation, how much can I do? So as I mentioned earlier, I got polio. Now I have some mobility with my leg. At that one time when I was about 9 or 10, my parents took me to a particular very intensive exercise treatment. So I was not going to school. I was just, so almost 8-9 hours a day, I was doing vigorous exercise. And it was quite exhausting. It was quite, some of the exercises were quite painful also. So because of that, I have at least some mobility right now. But at that time, so my mother had also taken a leave without pay and she was staying with me at the place where this clinic was. So I used to tell her that, this is just so painful, I cannot continue it. So my mother told me at that time, I don't know when the pain is going to be too much for you. So if you say the pain is too much, I'm not going to force you. This is, I'll tell you one thing. Said that, see, it is you who will be able to walk more or walk less at the end. So whatever choice you make, you will have to live with that choice eventually. So that was quite sobering for me. So ultimately, nobody else knows what our capacity's limit is. And even we ourselves may not know. And sometimes we may overestimate our capacity and sometimes we may underestimate our capacity. And that's why pratyaksha avagamam dharma. We have to try it out. Life is an experiment. We try it out and we decide how much is our capacity. Is doing our prescribed duty itself punya? Do we have to do some charitable duty or vrata or tirtha yatra to get punya credits? Well, there are degrees. Doing our prescribed duty is also very important. You shouldn't devalue it. And if you do it, that is good. Now, if you give charity and do something like that, that's even better. Now, if you do it for Krishna, that's even better. So, in the name of valuing something higher, we shouldn't devalue something which we are doing right now. I see, like I mentioned this, that we belong to some immediate whole. And if we are a part of a family, if the family is giving something to us, we have to do something to the family. So that is immediately a dharma. Now, if we are in society and we can do some charity, then that is, we are going beyond it. So there will be greater punya. It's not something which you are expected to do, but if you do it, that's good. So now if you do it for Krishna, and that Krishna consciousness means that we'll have eternal benefits from that. This karma concept is more complex than engineering mathematics. Why are we struggling so much to understand this? After all, we are going to this conclusion, our present actions matter, not everything is this time. Yes, that is the conclusion. But then we will all face situations where we will have to decide which of my present actions matter and how much do the present actions matter. So what we are trying to do through these classes is gain a sense that our mind can start playing games with us. Our mind may make us go in two ways. The mind, so we all have to, in life, we all have to, life and mind we can put it this way. We can over endeavor or we can under endeavor. So in between is the adequate, appropriate endeavor. So finding this balance is not easy. So our actions matter, but how much do they matter and when do they matter? So sometimes we may over endeavor in particular areas, although there is not much use in it. We may have to accept that. Sometimes what happens, we may try to gain the approval of some person. Like maybe in our childhood, we were compared unfavorably with a sibling or the neighborhood friend. And throughout our life, we are trying to gain the approval of a particular elderly person, particular father figure or particular parent figure. And now some people may never approve of us. No matter what we do, even if we do 100 things for them, they will only look at the 101st thing we have not done and criticize us for that. So then we may end up over endeavoring. See, if you see what the Bhagavad, the 6 limbs of bhakti, over endeavor is what? Prayas. So don't do prayas. But then under endeavor would be the opposite of utsaha. So we don't want prayas doing too much. We don't want under endeavor also. No utsaha. We need to have that balance. It's a very important role in our bhakti and in our daily life as well as in bhakti. So somebody may try to very much to become a preacher. And now they can, maybe they can do very good service cooking, maybe can do very good managing, but they try to preach and to prepare one class. They have so much anxiety because of that. Sometimes what happens is we try to do a service, and not only are we in anxiety because of the service, we put everyone around us in anxiety also. And then, maybe if that is the case, is that service really that important? Maybe it is and we have to learn and grow. Maybe it is not. So all of us, we need to understand where things will go into over endeavor, where they will be under endeavor. And that's how we can move ahead in life. What is talent? How is it related with destiny and karma? Well, talent is some ability that we naturally have. Like I use the word instinct. So some people have natural ability in music, maths, language, art, decoration, whatever. So we get talent by past karma, by destiny. And then when we use that talent by our present karma, that is our commitment, then we come to achievement. So talent plus commitment leads to achievement. So talent is destiny, commitment is present karma. What is Daiva? Daiva is the same as destiny. Okay, so in regards to dharma, can you shed light on why Yudhishthira gambled and not even a single Kuru saved Draupadi from getting disrobed? Yeah. This is one of the most difficult incidents in the Mahabharata. So to understand what happened, let's try to look at a broader picture. I mentioned this briefly yesterday, but Yudhishthira, like I mentioned, he was always bending backward to try to avoid a war. When he was given just the barren half of the kingdom, when he was given Khandav, Bhima was upset, Bhima was enraged, but Yudhishthira gracefully accepted it. Now, it was half the kingdom, but it was completely barren. So Yudhishthira accepted it, and then by Krishna's mercy, the Pandavas' hard work, what they did was, they made it a flourishing kingdom. Sometimes devotees have the simplistic idea that, city life is bad and we should live in villages. Or that simple living means village life. No. That the Pandavas converted a wilderness into a city is considered the mercy of Krishna. That from the Khandava forest they made it into Indraprastha. So the idea is that they made a flourishing kingdom over there, and then they did the Rajasuya Yajna. And when the Rajasuya Yajna happened, at the end of it, Vyasadeva, who was the presiding priest, Yudhishthira approached him and offered him dakshina and sought his blessings, saying that, O sage, bless me so that I can rule according to dharma and bring peace and prosperity for my kingdom. And Vyasa became very grave. And Vyasa said that, O king, I see the dark clouds of war in the near future. Since what you desire will happen, but after that great catastrophic war. So Yudhishthira, on hearing this, became very pensive. And he thought that what is the cause of war? War is caused by conflicts that are unresolved. When two people have disputes and they can't resolve it, then they fight. Now, why are conflicts unresolved? Because there is no authority that is accepted. So, for example, two people go to court and they get a judgment. One person gets a judgment, they don't like the judgment. They go to higher court. You go to higher court, the other person gets a favorable judgment, the first person doesn't like it. Then you go to the highest court and you get a judgment, you don't like it. Then both will decide, we don't accept it, we have extrajudicial, will fight this. If authority is not accepted, then conflicts become unresolved. And why is authority not accepted? Because there is not a spirit of obedience. That I should obey my elders. So he said that in order to prevent this whole thing from happening, I should avoid no obedience. I will always obey my elders. And now, what happened after that? Shakuni manipulated Duryodhana and Duryodhana pressured Dhritarashtra. And Dhritarashtra sent Vidura to Yudhishthira to call him for the gambling match. Now, when this happened, Yudhishthira, the first thing Yudhishthira said when Vidura came with the news of the gambling match, he says, oh Vidura, if we gamble, we'll fight. Gambling will be disastrous. I think this is terrible. So Vidura agreed. But Dhritarashtra had called. So Yudhishthira felt that, how can I disobey my elder? So he thought that if I disobey, that will lead to greater conflict. And that's why he went there. And when he came there, also the first thing he said to Yudhishthira said to Duryodhana is, oh Duryodhana, why do you want to steal from me the wealth with which I want to serve the Brahmanas, I want to serve society? I want to take care of my citizens. He says, Duryodhana said, who is trying to steal wealth from you? This is just a gambling match. Just having some fun. So then, when the gambling match started, Duryodhana said, Shakuni will play on my behalf. Yudhishthira said, this is wrong. He said that the person who puts the wealth should be the person who casts the die. Cast the dice. So Duryodhana laughed and he said, if you are afraid, don't play. Like this, he said, I'm not afraid, but this is improper. He looked at Dhritarashtra remained silent. So what happened was, Yudhishthira started playing. And when he started playing, he started playing and he started lost once, lost twice, lost thrice. And as he kept losing, he started feeling that, I have to do my dharma, I have to do my seva, I have to take care of my family, I have to take care of my citizens. If I just win one round, I'll get something back and I'll be able to do my dharma properly. So like that, he kept gambling and he kept losing and losing. So two things went wrong with respect to Yudhishthira over here. First is that yesterday I talked about when an artha is made into paramartha, that leads to anartha. So when obedience is an important value, but when obedience is made the supreme value, obey your elders. That is good, but do we not have to consider what the elders want? Are the elders wise? Are the elders well motivated? When obedience becomes the supreme value, that leads to anartha. So the second thing that happened is that good intentions are not the same as good intelligence. Just because we have good intentions, that doesn't mean we have good intelligence. Or just because we have good intentions, doesn't mean that we can do without good intelligence. I know one devotee, this happened in London, that this devotee, he was into investment, and from investment he went to the stocks. And he persuaded some devotees who are going to donate some money to the temple. They had saved that money to donate to the temple. He said that instead of donating to the temple, you give it to me, you invest with me, in 6 months I'll give double. And then you can give double to Krishna. And he took that money, and what happened? He lost it. When he lost it, instead of acknowledging it, he told other devotees, you also give, I'll also make your money double. And then eventually this one devotee, who was actually a very good devotee, he ended up bankrupting an entire community. And then after that, now as ISKCON devotees, we made policy that just because some devotee, the senior devotee that is, or even if it's your spiritual master, your spiritual guide, if they tell you invest money over here, you have to use your intelligence. The spiritual master is your spiritual master. The spiritual master is not your financial master. The spiritual master is not your medical master. So there's a difference in areas. So my point is that this devotee was very well intentioned. He thought, let's give more money to Krishna, and he ended up losing all the money. So life is cruel. And if we do not have the expertise to deal with a particular field, and we deal with it in that field, Our good intentions are not going to save us. We will be destroyed. Abhimanyu went with good intentions, but he didn't know how to come out of Chakravyuh. He was destroyed. Jatayu, Sita told Jatayu, you will not be able to defeat Ravan. Don't try to stop Ravan. Just inform Ram that that I have been abducted by Sita, by Ravan. And Jatayu felt Sita is like my daughter. How can I just stand by and watch her being abducted? Jatayu attacked. Now his spirits were great. His fight was heroic, and his sacrifice was glorious. But at the end of the day, he lost. So my point is that good intentions do not substitute for good intelligence. So Yudhishthir, this was his second mistake. And then after that, now I'll talk about mistakes. From the word mistake is really jarring, but I'll talk about it from later. Let's complete this pastime analysis at this level. Then after that, what happened is that everybody, this incident of they wanted to drag Draupadi in and disrobe her, this was such a horrendous incident that everybody was so aghast. What's happening? And it's like there is something which psychology called the bystander syndrome. Bystander syndrome means what happens is everybody thinks that somebody else will do something. And everybody waits for someone else to do something and nobody does anything for that. So basically, nobody could believe that this was happening. And somebody should stop. Now, South Indian Acharyas, when they talk about it, they say actually in that assembly, everybody committed adharma except Draupadi. Draupadi was the only person who stuck to dharma and reminded everyone of dharma. Even the Pandavas, they miscalculated. The Pandavas, they had lost themselves and they had become slaves. So now, yes, you have become a slave, but does that mean the slave has no rights? Does it mean just because they are slaves, does it mean that they have no responsibility to protect their wife? So they chose Dasya Dharma over Pati Dharma. Dasya Dharma is we have to obey our masters. Pati Dharma is I have to protect my wife. So they chose Dasya Dharma over Pati Dharma. So everybody comes out from that particular assembly everybody comes out. Nobody comes out with a good light. Everybody is scarred over there. So this is analysis from an ethical perspective. But this is not the only level of analysis. Scriptures can be analyzed at 4 different levels. At a literal level, we look at the story and enjoy the story. At the ethical level, we try to understand who is right and who is wrong. At the allegorical level, we try to look at the symbolism in the story. And at the devotional level, we see it as Krishna Leela. So right now, I analyze at the ethical level. Now at the devotional level, we can say that ultimately, whatever Yudhishthir did, whatever everyone did, it was ultimately meant to demonstrate how we have no protector except Krishna. So the devotional and the ethical, they don't necessarily contradict each other. They're just different ways of looking at things. So Yudhishthir at the end didn't say that, I didn't make any mistake. Whatever I did was so that Krishna could teach a lesson. No, Yudhishthir felt responsible. And what did Yudhishthir do? Yudhishthir, in some ways, he became life-hardened or battle-hardened. So some people say he was just a gambling addict. He was not a gambling addict at all. He had a misplaced sense of morality. And he realized that obedience is important, but you have to look at editing. You have to look at the intentions of a person also. You cannot make one particular value into the supreme value. So this does not mean we should not obey our elders. That's not the point. The point is that obedience should not replace intelligence. The point of obedience is to strengthen our intelligence, not weaken and replace our intelligence. Yeah?
Great. Bro, later in Mahabharata, when Duryodhana is asked, Duryodhana goes away, then Yudhishthira Maharaj says, okay, you can fight with any one of us 5.
Yeah.
Then Krishna is later
Krishna is not happy with that.
not happy, yeah. So I wanted to ask is, like you said, Yudhishthira is not a gambling addict, but it was gambling nature or Like in Yudhishthira, because again he's
No, at that particular point, their point was Duryodhan was under the water, he was not ready to come out. They wanted to have a fair fight. Now, Duryodhan also had his ego, and Duryodhan would not have chosen anyone else. His whole life he was preparing to defeat Bhima. He had lost everything that he had done. He lost one battle I wanted to win. So Yudhishthir could tend to be a bit more magnanimous, and sometimes that might not be the best thing. So we all have our nature, and Yudhishthir we also know felt very guilty at the end of the war. So the Bhagavatam and the Mahabharata does not like deny the individuality of devotees in the name of saying that they are pure devotees. Yudhishthira is very much an individual. And as an individual, he's a much more soft-hearted person. And that's why at the end of the war, when he came to know that Karna was his brother, and he had celebrated the killing of Karna, he just, all of it accumulated and just became a burden for him. I've lost my sons, we lost so many of our relatives, so many soldiers were killed. And what kind of person am I that I celebrated in joy at the death of my own brother? And that very brother had an opportunity to kill me. But he did kill me, and I goaded my brother Arjuna to kill him. I think of myself as a good person, but if I'm really a good person, then wouldn't my mother have entrusted me with this truth? Why didn't she tell this to me? So he started feeling that I cannot be a king. I'm not worthy of being a king. So he's a great devotee, but what the Mahabharata depicts is that life can sometimes be tormentingly complex. And it's tormentingly complex. And sometimes what is the right thing to do can become very, very difficult to decide. So now, like in a cricket match, after India loses a match, everybody becomes an expert cricket advisor. They say, oh, this person should get the ball, this person should come first to bat. Everybody can give an advice like that. What do they say? That hindsight is always 20/20. That means once you're looking after the event, you can say, this should have been done, this should not have been done. But actually, when you're going through that event, it's a challenging situation to be in. So Yudhishthir at that particular time made a decision. And that might not have been the best decision, but that also shows his nature. So is that a weakness? Well, no, it's a feature of a nature. And sometimes that feature can become a weakness. Sometimes it can be a strength. Okay. One last question we'll take. There are some more questions remaining, but we'll take that in the later session.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I think you have already answered the question I'm going to ask. But again, I'm asking because I want some more elaborate explanation on that. Let's suppose often we see that we set some goals in our life and we start acting on that goal. We perform duties like we set goals like I have to crack UPSC or I have to crack IIT, and we start studying for this. But somehow or other we do not get result as per our expectation. So the question is, so whatever activities we perform, whatever duty we perform like studying, so will fructify as a good result maybe in future or maybe in next life, or it doesn't? It will not be counted as a good karma or something like that. That will give me a good return in future. So does only charity gives good credit and it will give good results or good reaction, or doing this duty as well, which we have not got the result right now, but maybe in next life or next life?
I got your questions. There are different degrees in this. See, the point of in bhakti, when we talk about transcendence and going back to the spiritual world, at that time, anything other than bhakti may just be equalized. It's all temporary. And it's not really valuable. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that there is a big difference. Sometimes we may equate Rajoguna and Tamoguna. So, for example, say we are going to go beyond Rajoguna and Tamoguna and come to Sattva. And then go beyond Sattva to Bhakti. Kada Rajastamo Bhava Kamaro Bhadayashchini. See, that is true, but he says Rajoguna is 100 times better than Tamoguna. So, doesn't use the word 100 times, he says Tamoguna is poison and Rajoguna can be an antidote to the poison. So, what do you mean by that? Like, say, if you consider Indian parents. Now, Indian parents may be very rajasic. They have a lot of expectations on the children. You know, you should get this much marks and you should do this and you should earn this much money and you should marry in this way and this and that. There's a lot of Rajoguna is there. But then, you know, any Indian parent, if the child falls sick, the parents will be ready to move heaven and earth to try to treat their child. Now, we may say rajasic parenting is just materialistic. That is true. But what would be tamasic parenting? I met one devotee. He was telling that basically his father was never in the picture. His mother was always a single mother. And when he was 4 or 5, at that time his mother became a drug addict. And he said practically from the age of 5, I was taking care of my mother. So he said my mother didn't even know that I existed sometimes. She was so stoned. So America is there's a welfare state, somewhat, not exactly welfare state, but a lot of welfare policies. So, you know, if you don't have a job, then you can go to you have food stamps and you can get food. Because as a 5-year-old child, I would go with a neighbor and I would go to food stamps and I would get food. And I would feed my mother. So, you know, a parent who doesn't even know that their child exists is definitely a tamasic parent. And so rajasic parent is 100 times better than that. So, in terms of degree, when you talk about punya, being in sattva is punya as compared to rajas and tamas. But being in rajas is also punya as compared to being in tamas. So there is materially also somebody can be responsible. Somebody can be materially responsible and somebody can be materially and spiritually responsible. So there are degrees. So being materially responsible is also a good thing. And if you don't get results, we are learning by working hard in a particular field, we learn some discipline, we learn something valuable. And yes, that will count in a particular way. What particular way we don't know. But whatever we do, ultimately that will help us grow and that will contribute to future in some way. So ultimately the system, that the basic principle is that if we act responsibly, that is a good thing. Now, which action is a responsible action? Which action may be more responsible, which action may be less responsible? That's something which has to be individually carefully deliberated. Okay? We get our next life by our karma and by the remembrance at the time of death. Suppose somebody got an animal body. At that time, we know the law of karma is not applied on animals. Then how do they get the next body? Well, generally, once a person's soul leaves a human body, more or less their subsequent trajectory is fixed. So, the anta kale cha mamaiva principle primarily applies to human form. It does not so much apply to an animal form. Because, as I say, animals don't have free will. So now, of course, if the animals are attached to a devotee who is attached to Krishna, that's a different situation. But generally speaking, whatever form, whatever karma we have, that will determine when we left the last human form. And if you go into animal life, the subsequent trajectory of life is more or less determined by the karma from the human life itself. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi.